Would you like to know how to qualify for a home loan? Good. That's what we're talking about today. Loans can be a really tricky business. There's a lot of people Googling and wanting to know, how do you do that? How do you line yourself up? It sounds like banks have all this strange criteria, and sometimes getting a loan appears to be easy, and then in the end, you didn't qualify. What's really behind the curtains of working with banks and actually being able to qualify for a loan? Well, we're going to talk about that. Now, when we talk about qualifying for a home mortgage, it's really important to do some basic credit management. Everyone's got to know how to manage their credit, build their credit over time if you want to use your own credit to qualify for real estate, a primary residence, or investment properties like I like to do. Now, there are 3 different credit bureaus that each will give you a different credit score, and the banks will usually go off of the middle score. And these 3 credit bureaus each have a different way of coming up with your FICO score or credit score, but in general they have a very similar algorithm. I'm going to give you 5 simple tips that I use that will actually help you grow and manage your credit so that in time, if not immediately, you can qualify for a home loan. The first one is to have a minimum of 3 credit lines. They're called trade lines in the industry. And a credit line would be like a credit card. Anything that uses and reports to the credit bureau. I'll use credit cards as an example because they're the most popular. To qualify for a home loan, banks are going to want to see usually a minimum of 2 and sometimes 3 trade lines, and they're going to want to see them open for 12 to 24 or 36 months to say, okay, so-and-so actually knows how to manage their credit. The second tip is to make sure that you don't have too many trade lines and that you're not trying to get too many credit cards. So for example, one of my rules, don't fall into the trap of saving 10% at any of the retail stores by applying for their in-store credit card, because it'll actually ding your credit, even if just temporarily, to keep trying to get that. Banks also don't want to see that you have too many credit lines open. They say, wow, that person's desperate, or they actually need credit to live and survive. The third tip is to be careful of inquiries. Don't be applying for credit everywhere you go. Don't shop around too much. Don't go to 5 different auto loan places trying to qualify and get 5 different applications pulled on your credit. Be careful to really minimize that. Number 4, never, ever, ever, ever go late on any payments. Delinquents can stand on your credit for a long time. Now, if you have some, don't worry. Within usually 1, 2, or 3 years, they're going to fall off your credit in the eyes of the bank at least. So just make sure that whatever you got to do to never be late on any of your credit reportings, do that. The 5th thing that I want to share is that if you have a credit card, never use more than 30% of what's available to you. If you have a $1,000 credit card, don't go over $300. And if you do hit that $300 mark, pay it off, or at least pay it off over a couple of months. If you have your credit cards going up intentionally to that 30% mark and intentionally paying them off, you will actually build your credit. And so what it does is it shows banks that you can responsibly use your credit. That's a huge part of qualifying for a mortgage, for them to see that you can handle small lines of credit. Okay, when qualifying for a home loan, there's 2 other really important aspects that you need to be aware of. One of them is getting money in savings, right? Because when you buy this house, if you're buying investment real estate, yeah, you got to put a 20% down payment on average. But for primary residence, there's a ton of programs out there where you can put between 3 and 5% down. Let's say you're going FHA with a 3.5% down payment. On a $200,000 house, you're talking about $7,000. So while you're in the preparation mode or getting ready to qualify, the banks are going to want to see that you can put that 3, 4, 5% down payment, and that you also have at least 3 to 6 more months of mortgage money in the bank. So if I'm buying a $200,000 house, there's $7,000 there. Hopefully you were smart and wrapped your closing costs into the loan. Nice little trick, something I like to do. And then when it comes to 6 months of mortgage payments, if the mortgage is going to be, let's say $1,000, then the banks want to see another $6,000 in the bank maybe. So you're talking about having maybe $10,000 to $13,000 saved up for making this very important purchase. The other thing that the banks are going to be looking for is what's called job history. They want to know that you're stable, and they're going to define stable as having at least 2 years in the same industry. It doesn't have to be the same job, but if you went from being a car salesman to maybe like selling stocks on a New York Stock Exchange, the banks might say, hey, that's not quite the same industry. Those things are 2 very different things. Sometimes you can get the industries to link together. And here's another little bonus. If you just came out of college and you graduated in marketing and just got a job in marketing, and let's say you had a starting salary of $40,000 a year,
the bank will actually, because your job or career is in the same vein of what you graduated in, they'll actually count your school as a 2-year work history. So you can get away sometimes with 18 months, but in general, stay in your career type or in your job industry for at least 2 years. That'll help you qualify big time.
Okay, another aspect of qualifying for a mortgage, which is very key, is called a debt-to-income ratio. And in shorthand, they call it a DTI. And the debt-to-income ratio, don't let that terminology scare you. It just pretty much means how many ongoing revolving debts do you have each month that report on your credit compared to your income. Let's make it real simple. If you had an income of $4,000 a month, the typical bank will actually let you use 40% of that to go towards a mortgage. So what's 40% of $4,000 a month? That's somewhere right around $1,600. So $1,600 a month, that'll actually qualify you for a below the national median home, $200,000 loan, for example. If you make double that, then the banks will say, well, you can afford double that. Now, banks all have a different rule for their debt-to-income ratio management. You know, one bank might say you can go up to 50%, and a lot of them do. Some will say 35%. 40% is a really good rule of thumb. So with your debt-to-income ratio, you pull your credit report and you say, what kind of debts do I have reporting on there? Well, I've got a credit card and I owe a $400 minimum payment, and that's what reports. Okay, that $400 counts towards your debts. You take all the things reporting on your credit, and let's say you've got $1,000 worth of debt and you can have up to $2,000 for qualifying for a mortgage. That would leave you $1,000 left to qualify for a home. And that might be like a $160,000 home, for example. So be aware of that as you're looking to get qualified for a home mortgage. That'll also give you a little bit of a key indicator on how much you can qualify for. Any mortgage officer you sit down is going to be able to help you know what your debt to income ratio is and help you understand what you can qualify for. So you don't even have to do the math.
All right, let me share one last little bonus with you, because now we've talked about what you can do to actually qualify for a home mortgage. Take it from me. This is a point of magic, because if you don't just find a house that will be a home for you, find a home that can be a house. Meaning, buy something that will suit your family's needs and help you sink your roots down. But for heaven's sakes, if you're going to buy a house with, 10, 15, 20% discount into it. You buy this house, and if you buy a house with a 20% discount, think about it. I buy a house for $200,000, it's worth $250,000. The day you sign on that, you're $50,000 richer, at least on paper. But what does that mean down the road? It means that if you got in a bind, you could sell that house and you could take $40,000. You could refinance it out later and put it towards an investment property. In fact, I constantly advise people, when it comes to buying your own primary residence, don't just fall in love with something emotionally without making sure you also fall in love with the deal and the numbers, because that's one of the fastest ways to either get as much house as you and your family needs, or it's actually a great backdoor strategy to get into real estate investing. You've created that option because you've got that extra $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 of equity to play with now. Hey, thanks for watching today. Got a shout out here from my good friend Nate Woodbury. Want to thank him for helping us get these videos produced. And also, you got to check out his YouTube channel, Business Paradigm.
Yeah, the business paradigm is all about having the right paradigm to succeed in business. And when we're talking real estate, the best way I've found to get in that right paradigm, that right mindset is with Chris's book, The Straight Path to Real Estate. A great book, highly recommend it. And here's the cool thing. I've arranged with Chris. He's willing to give this book away for free. We've put it on audio CD, and you can have a copy of it sent to you as long as you'll cover the shipping costs.
Hey, with that, thank you for watching today.